Verse 1, here comes Elijah the Tishbite, a man of Gilead. We don't know much about his background. Matter of fact, none really biblically and historically. Just he showed up one day in Jezreel in Samaria and went right straight to the horse's mouth. He didn't monkey around. He didn't complain about it. He didn't fuss about it. Let me tell you something. You got a problem with somebody, go to them. Don't beat around the bush and talk about behind their back. Go to them. And you know how easily things can be clarified? Misunderstandings can be clarified. The devil doesn't want you going by the word. The devil wants you going by your emotions. The devil doesn't want you to do what God says. The devil wants you to do what you think. And what I think will get me in trouble. What God says will get me out of trouble. So here comes Elijah, the man of God, in chapter 17. And in verse 4 and 5, well, he announced to old Ahab that it wasn't going to rain. And that's all he said. It ain't going to rain. Can you imagine Ahab looking at that fella? Now, Elijah was scantily clad with a leather loin strap. And hairy. He long haired, he bearded. Bible says he's hairy. That's when Hazael said, who was it? And described Elijah. I know what I'm talking about. It's right over there in 2 Kings chapter 1. If old Elijah had walked in here today, it'd scare most of us to death. We'd say, my goodness, call the Smith County Sheriff's Department. We got a homeless bum coming in here. But God doesn't look on the outward. God looks on the heart. And yet there are people today who want to look on the outward just like Saul and just like Samuel and just like so many others. But as God told Samuel, I don't look on the outward. I look on the heart. And how's the heart? So can you imagine Ahab, who nobody challenged? They were scared to death of him. Nobody dared ruffle Jezebel's feathers, or she'd torture you without mercy. And you would pray to die time that woman got done with you. Now here comes the man of God, Elijah. And he says, basically, because of your sin, ungodliness, and forgetting God, turning to Baal, it ain't going to rain one drop. And there will be no dew on this earth till I say so. Turn around and left. Can you imagine? Now, you know the character of Ahab. You know he had to tell his woman. He tells Jezebel, there's a strange old man claimed to be prophet. I couldn't even tell how old he was. He's a hairy, bearded, long-haired, going everywhere. I never seen such a feller in my life. But he said, ain't going to. I'd say old Jezebel laughed. He's crazy. He's mentally ill. He's out of step. He's politically incorrect. We don't listen to him. We get rid of him. He dare show his face around this palace where I'm at. We get rid of that crazy thing. Hey, Jezebel, a week passed, not a drop of dew on the ground in the morning. A month passed. It's been a long time now. Now what are you doing? Now what you thinking? So they turn their hostilities to the man of God, Elijah. But God's got a place for him out by the brook of Cherith. See there in verse 2. And God said, I've commanded the ravens there by the brook to sustain you and feed you there. Look at verse 5. So he went and did according to the word of the Lord. I'm telling you, obedience. Get this up there. We've got a divine supply. I've commanded the ravens to feed thee there. I've commanded the ravens to feed thee there. You know, we preached about that little word there. You don't want to be over here. If a bus is coming by at 5 o'clock at the station, you want to be at the station at 5 o'clock. You don't want to be over yonder somewhere else. I'm telling you, there's a bus coming in here. There's a power of God coming in here. I don't want to be over yonder. I don't want to be down yonder. I want to be right here where God said to be and obeying God. Watch it now. I've commanded the ravens to feed you. Now, a lot of people say that was an Arab merchantman. Others say it was a hangout for ravens, whatever. But it was a miracle. God sustained him. But then the brook dried up. Hear me real quickly this morning. Sometimes situations change, but God doesn't. And if you ever leave a church for another church, make sure that it's God moving you. Don't you move when you're upset. Let me ask you a question. If you change churches, why did you do that? You've heard me say this before. And if you tell me, well, the preacher hurt my feelings. So if the preacher hadn't hurt your feelings, you wouldn't have moved, right? Well, yeah. Then you moved because the preacher hurt your feelings. Well, I didn't like the way they done things. Well, what if they didn't do those things? Would you move? Bible said in Romans 8, they that are led of the Spirit are the children of God. Don't run because you're upset or mad. Don't ever say something to your wife when you're mad. You might say something, you'll have to mash your own taters for a few weeks. And you can cause unnecessary difficulties sometimes. So be careful what we say and how we do and how we go and all the rest of it. So when the situation changed, God said, get up there to that widow woman. And so the widow's son ends up being Elijah's servant in the end of chapter 17. So this little widow woman, you know the story. She went up there and she got that, she saw Elijah coming. We mentioned this briefly last week. She said, what have I got to do with you, you man of God? And God had already prepared her. She was going out and scavenging some sticks so she could build a little fire. She had a little bit of meal and a little bit of oil in a cruse, a little bit of meal in a barrel. That's all she had left. But whatever you got left is enough with God. And even if you ain't got nothing left, because that's when you get to the end of your barrel. That's the only time you're ever going to get to the top of God's. I'd say it again, as long as there's an ounce of old Mike Sage in me, the new Mike Sage ain't going to live. If I work in the human spirit, I cannot be working with the Holy Spirit. It's that simple. So she had a little bit of flour and a little bit of oil, and Elijah said, make a cake, make 3 cakes, one for me first, then for you and the boy. And she did it. And when she scooped out that last ounce of flour out of the bottom of that barrel and sprinkled it there on her countertop, and she bottomed up that little cruse, and the last drop of oil went into that flour. And she kneaded it up and fixed it up, put it on the pan, put it on the fire, and it baked up, and they enjoyed that together. Now, a lot of people would say, oh my goodness, their goose is cooked, they're done, that's it, no more, that's over with. No, they're in the place now. They're there now. They're there now. And as long as you got some flour, and as long as you got some oil, and as long as there's a little bit of hope in the world, and a little bit of hope in you or whatever, you ain't never going to bind a strong man like C.T. was preaching down there at the tent here not long ago. That strong man, the devil's stronger than I am. But I'll tell you, there came a stronger man into my life about back yonder in May of 1967, and he bound the strong man, took the chains off of me, and now he's my friend, my guard. And if that old strong man ever comes back around trying to get into you, if you try to fight him on your own, he'll win every time. You can't hide your weakness behind religion. You can't hide your weakness on trying to be philosophically right or politically correct. The only strength we have is the Lord. The only hope we have is the Lord. The only way we're going to make it is the Lord. The only way you can be saved is the Lord. The only way you'll ever have revival in your life or the life of the church is the Lord. Only Him. No one else. No one else. So, got a little hungry. Elijah said to the widow woman, ain't it time to eat again? Well, she looked funny, but she went on back in there. And she knew she had exhausted everything that she had. But when, Brother Bob, she put that scoop down in that barrel, that little old barrel, I don't know, it's a little old flour bin. I don't know how big it was. About like one at your house, I guess. She had that little old scooper. She went down in there. She couldn't see nothing. But we don't walk by sight. We walk by faith. Like Habakkuk said. Like Paul repeated. And when she put that scooper in there, though she didn't see anything, she felt something. There was resistance. And she brings that scoop up. She can't see it with her natural eye. But when she swipes it out there on that counter, that was from another world. He's the bread of heaven that comes down from God. You can't see Him with these, but you can sure see Him with these. And then when He said, I go back to my Father, and I'll send you the oil of joy. I'll give you the same Spirit that raised me from the dead and that conquered Satan himself. My Spirit will be in you. When that oil mingles with that bread and you take it down in your being, you'll never get hungry again. You drink this water, you'll never thirst again. You're not going to be looking for anything else, because this is that was to come. And there isn't anything else other than Jesus Christ and His love, His mercy, His peace, and His grace. Are you understanding that? Now, does that mean that you're not going to have any troubles? No, because that little boy died. And we'll be real quick. Elijah went up there. Boy, we can read Elijah's prayer. You can read it on your own here in chapter 17 from verse 18 to 24. Elijah went up in that little old room and he said, God, what in the world's going on here, basically? He said, but now, God, you can do anything, and I want you to bring the soul back. He called for the soul of that young'un in Abraham's bosom in paradise. And Elijah was such a praying man that when he called on God, God heard him. And that little boy came back to life. God will bless you even in your sorrow, even in your amazement, in your confusion, in your wonderment. And now that little widow woman that had saw God bless her flour barrel and her little oil, her little jug of oil, now sees the ultimate. Her boy that was dead is alive again. The resurrection power of God through the Holy Spirit dwells inside of all of us who are saved. And that little feller becomes the servant of Elijah to follow him everywhere he went. And everywhere Elijah would go from there, that little feller was not far behind. It was in my mind that little feller that had been 3.5 years now. And old Ahab and Jezebel hadn't seen Elijah, but they had heard about him. The devil's heard about you. And now Ahab and Jezebel's blaming Elijah for the troubles of Israel. And now Elijah shows back up after 3.5 years. And he tells Ahab, we'll have us a contest. And so they go up yonder on Carmel. You know the story well. And that praying man of God prays again. Very simply, like James said in James chapter 5. He was a man of passions just like ours. He had lack. He had times of no faith. He was really an incredible study, old Elijah is. But when he got up there to pray, he basically said, God, so that everybody will know that you're God and that I'm not doing this on my own, strike this altar with fire. And God did it. And then by faith he told Ahab, I hear the sound of an abundance of rain. And he sent that little servant boy. That's the one that had been dead. He's alive now. When Jesus gave the bread and the grape juice, and then he got the basin. I can't imagine this, but it's true. The resurrected God is at your beckoning 24/7. He'll take care of your every need. 7 times that little fella ran to the summit of Carmel and came back down. 6 times he said, I don't see nothing. But the 7th time, he said, there's a little cloud out there about the size of a man's hand. And that did it for Elijah. He said, that's God. You better get gone, Ahab, and get your team fixed up to that chariot and get back to Jezreel. And before Ahab could get back to Jezreel, the man of God done come under the power of God and outrun him at 16 miles down that Jezreel highway and was waiting on him in the gates of Jezreel after that mighty outpouring of God. So yes, there's a dire situation out here, but there is a divine supply, and there's delivering strength too. We don't have time to get into all these verses. We'll just close up right here and maybe take it up next week, because old Elijah, we're going to get back to Elijah in a minute, but now we're going to have to close here because I feel like God wants us to close. Let's bring it to a close.